Commissioned in 1904 to identify school children most in need of special help, Binet certainly wasn't going to measure skulls. Instead, he developed a set of behavioral tests designed to tap a variety of different abilities, but not simply academic learning. Binet intentionally used a hodgepodge of different tests, things like putting together patterned blocks to match an overall picture, or identifying whether two diagrams were rotations of the same object. In Binet's words, quote, "It matters very little what the tests are, so long as they are numerous," end quote. Binet calculated his results in terms of the mental age of a child compared to the child's chronological age. Those with the greatest disparity between mental and chronological age were those who needed most help in school. It was the German psychologist W.L. Stern who suggested that dividing mental age by chronological age would result in a convenient number. Division gives you a quotient, and so the concept of an intelligence quotient, or IQ, was born. Binet knew the limits of his test. He repeatedly wrote that it was developed for a limited practical purpose, to get kids the help they need in school. He emphasized that the test was not intended to measure some single thing called intelligence. He warned that it should not be used as a basis for ranking normal children. He insisted that whatever his test measured, there was no reason to treat it as innate or unchangeable. Quite the contrary. The whole idea was to change the educational environment so as to serve student needs. In the early 20th century, Binet's test was brought to America and was renamed the Stanford-Binet test, the ancestor of all contemporary IQ variations. In the process, all of Binet's warnings regarding the misuse of his test were ignored. It was used not merely for specific educational purposes, but as a way of ranking people in general. It was treated as measuring a single thing called intelligence, and it was assumed that what it measured was innate. Who set American scientists along this path? H. Goddard brought Binet's test to America. He immediately used it to rank individuals. In 1910, Goddard announced a set of new technical terms for the lowest categories in the ranking. Those terms have since become a normal part of the English language. People scoring in the three lowest categories were labeled idiots, imbeciles, and morons. Goddard thought it patently obvious that idiocy and imbecility were innate and immutable, and he was a firm proponent of eugenics. He argued that our society needed to take steps to stop idiots and imbeciles from breeding. His position was commonly held at the beginning of the 20th century. It's echoed in one of the most chilling Supreme Court cases of all time. In the 1927 Buck versus Bell decision, the Supreme Court upheld a Virginia law that called for the sterilization of the mentally inferior, in particular of a woman who tested poorly and whose mother and daughter did as well. Here are the words of the Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, quote, "We have seen more than once that the public welfare may call upon the best citizens for their lives. It would be strange if it couldn't call upon those who already sap the strength of the state for these lesser sacrifices. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough," end quote. Many states have since rescinded their sterilization laws, but Buck versus Bell has never been officially overturned. Between 1927 and 1960, an estimated 60,000 American citizens, mostly women, were involuntarily sterilized. During World War I, IQ tests were used as a basis for officer selection. The Army IQ tests were given under radically uneven circumstances, by people of radically uneven training, to people from radically different backgrounds. Some recent immigrants taking the test were not proficient enough in English to understand the test instructions. It's been suggested that some people who took the test might never have held a pencil in their hands before. Nevertheless, the results were used, much like Morton's skulls, to rank races in terms of intelligence. Whites came out on top. The blonde and blue-eyed people of Northern Europe came out more intelligent than the darker people of Southern Europe. African Americans were at the bottom. These results suited the white government officials just fine. Those data were particularly influential in the passing of the Immigration Restriction Act of 1924. Quotas were set to keep out unintelligent aliens, with a special eye to keeping out the dark peoples of Southern and Eastern Europe. Calvin Coolidge signed the bill into law saying, quote, "America must be kept American," end quote. Not exactly eugenics, but social engineering nonetheless.